My sister stole my inheritance after convincing everyone I was irresponsible. My mom smirked and said, "You'd have wasted it anyway." I cut contact. 7 years later, I pulled up to the reunion in a $240,000 car, while they showed up late because their rusted van just died while they were on the way. I, 32M, grew up believing family meant something. That blood mattered. That when everything else fell apart, you had each other. I was wrong about all of it. My grandfather died when I was 25. He was the only person in my family who ever really saw me, the only one who didn't treat me like I was some kind of walking disaster waiting to happen. The old man had built a successful construction company from nothing, and when he passed, he left behind a substantial estate. His will was clear. Everything was to be split equally between me and my sister. Except that's not what happened. The funeral was on a Tuesday. By Friday, my sister had already started her campaign. She cornered my mother in the kitchen after the reception, and I overheard parts of it through the thin walls of my childhood home. She reminded Mom about the time I'd quit my job 3 years earlier to try freelancing, about how I'd moved apartments twice in 1 year, about the motorcycle I'd bought and sold within 6 months. Every financial decision I'd ever made, every risk I'd taken, every moment of uncertainty in my 20s became evidence of my fundamental irresponsibility. My sister had always been the golden child, married at 23 to her high school sweetheart, 2 kids by 26, a stable government job with benefits and a pension. She was everything my parents wanted me to be, and I was everything they feared I'd become. The conversations happened without me. Family meetings I wasn't invited to. Discussions about my future and my capability to handle money. My sister painted a picture of someone who'd blow through his inheritance in a year, who'd end up broke and crawling back to them for help. She convinced them she was protecting me from myself. 3 weeks after the funeral, my mother asked me to come over. I sat at the same kitchen table where I'd eaten breakfast as a kid, and she explained how things were going to work. The inheritance would be restructured. My sister would receive the bulk of the estate immediately. I would get a smaller amount, held in a trust, doled out in monthly payments to prevent me from making stupid decisions. I asked why. My mother looked at me with something between pity and disgust. She said I'd have wasted it anyway. That my sister had a family to think about, responsibilities I couldn't understand. That this was for my own good. My sister sat there the whole time, watching me. When I finally looked at her, she smirked. Not obviously enough for Mom to notice, but I saw it. That tiny upturn at the corner of her mouth. She'd won, and she wanted me to know it. I asked to see the paperwork. My mother said there was no point. The lawyers had already handled everything. I asked how they could change a will without my consent. She said they'd found ways around it, that Grandpa's will had some ambiguous language about protecting the beneficiary's best interests, and their lawyer had worked with that. I asked if this was even legal. She told me to stop being dramatic. The amount I was left with was insulting, roughly 15% of what should have been mine. My sister walked away with everything else, the investment accounts, the stocks, the cash savings, even Grandpa's vintage truck that I'd helped him restore. I left that house and never went back. The first year was the hardest. I was angry in a way that consumed everything else. I'd wake up furious and go to bed furious. I cut contact with all of them. Mother, father, sister, her husband, even my niece and nephew who I'd loved. I blocked their numbers, blocked them on social media, moved to a different part of the city, and didn't leave a forwarding address. My sister tried reaching out a few times in the beginning. Text messages about how I was being childish, how family was supposed to forgive, how she'd only been looking out for me. I deleted them without responding. My mother sent a birthday card the first year with a note about how I was breaking her heart. I threw it away. I took the small amount they'd left me, and I got to work. I was freelancing as a software developer back then, nothing glamorous, mostly contract work for small businesses. But I was good at it. Really good. I started taking every job I could find, working 16-hour days, teaching myself new programming languages and frameworks at night. Within a year, I'd saved enough to partner with 2 other developers on a startup. We built a project management platform aimed at construction companies. Ironic, considering Grandpa's legacy. The first version was buggy and half-broken, but we had something the competitors didn't. We actually understood the industry. We knew what contractors needed because I'd spent my childhood summers on job sites with my grandfather. The company grew slowly at first, then faster, then exponentially. By year 3, we had clients in 15 states. By year 5, we were fielding acquisition offers from major tech companies. We turned them down and kept building. I moved into a better apartment, then a house. I bought a used Audi, then traded it in for a new one. I traveled, Tokyo, Barcelona, Sydney. I dated. I focused on becoming the person I wanted to be instead of the person they decided I was. I never forgot what they'd done, but I stopped letting it control me. The anger cooled into something harder and colder. Determination. Proof. 7 years after I walked out of that kitchen, I got a message from a cousin I'd been close to before everything fell apart. She wasn't asking me to reconcile or telling me I should forgive. She just wanted me to know there was going to be a family reunion. My parents' 40th wedding anniversary. Big party, the whole extended family invited. She understood if I didn't want to come, but she thought I should know about it. I almost deleted the message, but something stopped me. I asked where and when. She sent the details. A park pavilion on the other side of town, 2 weeks away, Sunday afternoon. I thought about it for days. Part of me wanted to ignore it completely, to keep living my life without looking back. But another part of me remembered that smirk. Remembered my mother's voice telling me I'd have wasted it anyway. Remembered how easily they'd all written me off. I decided to go. The morning of the reunion, I detailed my car. A Porsche 911 GT3, Arctic gray with carbon fiber accents. It was excessive and impractical, and I'd bought it 6 months earlier as a gift to myself after we closed our biggest contract yet. The sticker price was $240,000. I drove across town with the windows down, taking the long way, letting the engine sing. I wasn't in a hurry. I pulled into the parking lot at exactly 1 o'clock, the time the invitation said things would start. The pavilion was crowded with people I recognized. Aunts, uncles, cousins, family friends. I parked away from the main cluster of cars, in a spot where the Porsche would be visible from the pavilion. I sat there for a moment, hands on the wheel, breathing steadily. Then I got out and walked toward the party. People noticed me immediately. The conversations faltered as I passed, heads turning, whispers starting. I hadn't seen any of these people in 7 years. I'd been a struggling freelancer in worn jeans back then. Now I was wearing tailored clothes and carrying myself differently. Success changes how you move through the world. My cousin spotted me and came over, her face breaking into a genuine smile. She hugged me and asked how I'd been. I told her I'd been good, really good. She wanted to know everything, but I could see my parents across the pavilion, frozen in place, staring. My father recovered first. He walked over, his expression carefully neutral, and asked if I was really here. I said I was. He said it had been a long time. I agreed. He asked how I'd been doing. I told him I'd been doing well. He glanced past me toward the parking lot, toward the car that was very obviously mine, and something shifted in his face. My mother appeared then, looking older than I remembered. She stared at me like I was a ghost. She asked where I'd been all these years. I told her I'd been building a life. She said they'd worried about me. I didn't respond to that. Then my sister arrived, fashionably late as always. Except she wasn't arriving in style. She was walking up from the road, her husband beside her, both of them looking frustrated and sweaty. Their 2 kids trailed behind, whining. I watched them approach, taking in the details. My sister's clothes were nice but worn. Her husband had gained weight and lost hair. The kids needed new shoes. My cousin leaned over and whispered that their van had died on the way over. Apparently, it broke down about a mile from the park and they'd had to walk the rest of the way. She said the van was ancient and had been giving them problems for months. My sister spotted me as she reached the pavilion. She stopped dead, her mouth literally falling open. She looked at me, then at the parking lot, then back at me. I watched her do the math. She came over slowly, like she couldn't quite believe I was real. She said my name like a question. I acknowledged her with a nod. She asked what I was doing here. I said I'd been invited. She looked at our parents, then back at me, her expression cycling through confusion and shock and something that might have been fear. My mother found her voice. She said we should all sit down and talk, that it had been too long, that family was important. I told her I wasn't staying long. She insisted we should at least catch up. She asked what I'd been up to, her voice taking on that falsely cheerful tone people use when they're trying to pretend everything is fine. I gave them the basics. I owned a software company. We specialized in project management solutions for the construction industry. We had clients across the country. Business was good. I kept it vague, but let the success speak for itself. My sister asked if I was serious. I asked what she meant. She asked if I actually owned a company or if I was just working for one. I clarified that I was a co-founder and majority shareholder. Her face went pale. My father asked about the car in the lot, the gray Porsche. I confirmed it was mine. He asked what something like that cost. I told him around $240,000. My mother actually gasped. The extended family started gathering around, sensing drama. My uncles wanted to hear about the business. My cousins asked about the car. Everyone had questions about where I'd been and what I'd been doing. I answered politely, but without detail, redirecting the conversation when it got too personal. Through it all, I watched my sister. She stood there frozen, her earlier frustration about the van giving way to something darker. She was doing the math, calculating what the inheritance would be worth now if it had been invested properly, realizing what I'd built with my fraction while she'd done nothing with her windfall. Eventually, she pulled me aside. She said we needed to talk privately. I told her there was nothing to discuss. She insisted. She said she'd been young and scared back then, that she'd been worried about her own family's future. She said maybe things had gotten out of hand. She suggested that perhaps we could work something out now, that we were both adults and could find a fair solution. I asked her what kind of solution she had in mind. She stumbled over her words, talking about how family should share, how my grandfather would have wanted us to help each other, how she was struggling now and could really use some support. She mentioned medical bills for the kids, problems with their mortgage, the van that kept breaking down. I asked her if she remembered what Mom said to me 7 years ago. She looked confused. I reminded her. My mother had told me I'd have wasted it anyway. My sister's face went red. She said that was a long time ago, that people say things they don't mean. She said surely I couldn't still be holding on to that. I told her I wasn't holding on to anything. I let it go years ago. I'd built something without them, without their money, without their approval. I didn't need anything from any of them. She asked if I was really going to be that petty. I asked her if she remembered smirking at me in Mom's kitchen. She tried to deny it, but I could see in her eyes that she remembered perfectly. She'd enjoyed it then. She'd enjoyed winning. My mother joined us, sensing the tension. She said this was supposed to be a celebration, that we shouldn't be fighting. She suggested we all take a breath and remember that we were family. She turned to me and said she hoped I could find it in my heart to forgive old mistakes. She said she'd only been trying to protect me back then, that she'd thought she was doing the right thing. I told her she'd chosen my sister over me. She decided I wasn't capable or trustworthy or responsible enough to handle my own inheritance. She'd rewritten my grandfather's will without my consent and then told me to my face that I'd have wasted the money anyway. None of that was protection. It was theft dressed up as concern. She started crying. My father stepped in, his voice getting hard, telling me I was being cruel and disrespectful. He said my mother had spent 7 years worrying about me, wondering if I was okay, hoping I'd come back. He said the least I could do was show some gratitude that they'd cared enough to try to help me. I asked him if he knew what they'd actually done with the inheritance, if he knew how the money had been spent. He looked at my mother, then at my sister, both of them suddenly very interested in the ground. I could see he didn't know the details. My sister had burned through most of it in the first 3 years. New house they couldn't afford, new cars, private school for the kids, vacations, keeping up appearances in their suburban neighborhood. When the money ran out, they tried to maintain the lifestyle anyway. Credit cards, home equity loans. Her husband's salary couldn't cover it. Neither could hers. They were drowning now, buried under debt, driving a 15-year-old van held together with prayers and duct tape. Meanwhile, I'd taken my 15% and turned it into something real. The company was valued at 8 figures now. My personal net worth was higher than my grandfather's entire estate had been. I'd done it without their help, without their approval, without their permission. My father stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. I could see him recalculating everything he'd believed about me for the past 7 years. The irresponsible son who couldn't hold a job. The flake who'd disappoint them eventually. None of it was true, and now the evidence was parked in their parking lot in Arctic gray with carbon fiber accents. My sister tried one more time. She said blood was thicker than water, that we were family, that families helped each other. I told her she should have remembered that 7 years ago. She asked what I wanted from her, what would make this right. I told her I didn't want anything. That was the point. I'd built a life where I didn't need any of them. I said my goodbyes to the cousins who'd stayed friendly, the ones who'd never participated in the inheritance theft. I hugged the cousin who'd invited me and thanked her. Then I walked back to my car. My mother followed me across the parking lot, calling after me, asking if I was really going to leave like this. I told her I'd left 7 years ago. This was just a visit. She asked when she'd see me again. I said probably never. She broke down completely then, sobbing about how she'd lost her son, how she'd only been trying to help, how sorry she was. My father caught up and put his arm around her, but he didn't say anything to me. He just watched as I got in the car. The engine started with a roar that turned heads across the pavilion. I didn't peel out or make a scene. I just drove away smoothly, professionally, the way someone drives when they have nothing left to prove. In my rearview mirror, I could see my sister standing in the parking lot, her family clustered around her, all of them staring at my taillights. The van they'd walked away from was probably being towed by now. They'd need to call someone for a ride home. Maybe they'd have to borrow money for the repair. Maybe the van was beyond saving, and they'd need to figure out how to buy another one. None of that was my problem anymore. I drove home taking the scenic route, windows down, letting the summer air wash over me. The anger I'd carried for so long was finally, completely gone. Not because I'd forgiven them. Not because I'd gotten revenge exactly. But because I'd proven something that needed proving, if only to myself. They'd decided I was irresponsible, and they'd bet everything on that judgment. They'd stolen from me based on that assumption. They'd been so certain they were right. And they'd been completely, catastrophically wrong. That was enough.